I can't believe this year is almost over. And looking back, we've had some amazing guests to share things that can help you scale your agency faster, create more revenue, create more freedom in your agency. So let's go ahead and take a look back at some of the best guests we had on this year. So, one of my guests that I really enjoyed having on was Matt, and we talked about core values and really building a community around our core values. So I hope you enjoy. If you had to do it over again, creating a community for your clients, what would you do differently and how would you do it?
First thing I would do is this is one thing we did right. I'll tell you a lot of things we did wrong. We modeled another community that was successful. And we modeled Joel Kaplan's agency community because we had been through that. We loved the community. They had great coaches. They had a good mastermind. So we're like, okay, cool. Let's take what Joel did and let's make it for real estate agents. That's one thing we did right. I think one thing we did wrong is not setting clear expectations at the beginning of the community. You have to be very, very firm in your community. Otherwise, it will turn into a nightmare. It will turn into madness. Luckily, we haven't had too much of that yet, but we could have done a better job in the beginning of establishing our community's core values. We can say, look, if you don't want to be in the community, these are our core values. If you don't want to follow these core values, don't be in the community, don't join the program. You give the client an option on the front end to say no to you, which actually makes them more likely to say yes because you've taken yourself out of the sale. You say, I don't need you. If you don't want to be a part of our tribe, don't. And then the anthropological side of their mind kicks in. And they're like, oh,
I
I
want
want
to
to
be
be a part of
picked.
a tribe. I want to be picked. I want to be in the cool kids club. And so they say, you know what? I will follow your core values. Boom. Now they're in. They get indoctrinated into your tribe. And so that's one thing I think we could have done a better job of in the beginning is getting clear on our values and giving people the option to leave the community because then we would have only had the right people in and that would have made it much stronger from the get-go. It's because we know we have like-minded similar people that all share the same values growing together and that becomes the foundation of your community that expands as you expand as well.
Yeah, when we've been building the our mastermind over the years, it's all stems from our core values. If they don't believe a sense of abundance, be resourceful, always learning, share your wins, share your failures, have fun, not work all the time. How can we streamline things, right? Like if they believe in that, they'll do fantastic. If they come in kind of Mr. or Mrs. Know It All, they're very standoffish. They don't really answer our questions we ask. We're like, hey, this is not right for you, man. Like, sorry. Like,
Yeah.
go to these other communities. What did you like? These communities that or this community that you set up? Did they only get it as a client?
Yeah, so it basically got tied into our offer. If you're at our agency, you're also in our community. If you leave one, you leave the other. Now, we would sometimes let them cancel their Facebook ads and do coaching only if they wanted to, just as a way to keep them in at a lower rate. So we did do that. And we had a free community as well. We had a free Facebook group where we would do lives, we would make posts, we would do interviews. That's another little tip is create a free Facebook group in your niche, or rather, buy one. What we did is we bought one for $1,000. It had 8,000 realtors in it. That group has probably made us hundreds of thousands of dollars just from the members that are in there. And we bought it for $1,000. So having the free group as well was another valuable resource because now they're almost in our mini tribe. They're much more ready to join our main actual tribe.
Demi was an amazing guest where we talked about when is it right to go global with your agency. You know, that's one thing that we never did at our agency was we now the first agency we grew was 8 figures and at the time when I sold it, I felt like we reached the plateau of where my skill set was. Looking back and especially hearing this now, because it's been many, many years since I've thought about, well, once you're in a particular market, because we work with people all over the world, but most of those agencies work in those particular sectors. If they're in London, they work in the UK, right? If they're in Italy, they work in, but I haven't thought about going, man, once we've mastered this, it's almost kind of like mastering a niche. Did you guys have a niche? Like, I know you mentioned we did, like, what services you guys did. But did you do it for a
Yeah.
particular market and size companies?
No, so our original agency didn't. Some of the agencies that joined us did. So and which then allowed us to write. For instance, we pretty early on when Amazon advertising came up, we an Amazon focused agency joined, and they were based out of Germany, which gave us the opportunity to really roll that out in the rest of Europe. So that's like a good example of that. But I think.
Like, what was the decision making? Yeah, what was the decision making to go to other markets? Like, start in the Netherlands, right, first, then go to Europe, then like, what was the decision to go to Europe, and then what was the decision to go to the U.S.? Because there might be a lot of people here going, man, I really kind of I dominate the landscaping, niche or the real estate niche in the U.S. But they really haven't thought about it. It's kind of like Mr. Beast, right? The YouTuber that does everything.
Yeah, of
He's
course.
like
Yeah.
dominated YouTube over in the US. And then he's like, oh, well, let's translate this in Spanish and Italian.
Into all the exactly, and then just rack up the billions of views. Yeah, no. So I don't know if dominate is the right word, but I think the way we've always approached it is from a client first perspective, which means that um, you know we came up with the idea because we saw that our clients were looking for a type of agency like that. We built that up in the Netherlands because of that. Then, at the moment that we felt that our portfolio of services was just about good enough or done for the Dutch market, we said, okay, wait a second, we can serve our clients properly now. Let's go into the next market. And I think that that's always been our driver, is that you have a set of clients, you want to service them as good as you can, and the moment that you feel comfortable with that, that's when you go into a next market. So I don't think like market leadership or something isn't that important. It's much more about who are you servicing. Are you making them happy? Are you making them grow? Are you helping them save money? Are you all those things? And if you feel comfort in that, then it becomes interesting to say, hey, of the I just as this these numbers don't make sense, but I'm just as an example. Hey, we're now in Germany, but we see that 20% of our clients that we have in Germany are also active in Switzerland. Hey, maybe the Swiss market is interesting. And once you have that in a few European countries, you get to 10% of your clients that are also looking for services in the US. Why not go to the US? And if you have your clients in Europe and in the US, and you're servicing them right, there's a fair chance that they will say, "Hey, by the way, in APAC, we are looking for great social services or whatever it is," right? And then you make the jump. So it's like hyper client focused. Make sure you service the client. They will ask you questions, and that informs sort of the next step.
Now, with Guy, we talk about it's not the negative people holding your agency back and holding you back. It's the negative thoughts that you have. It's the lack of confidence. And he's got some really great points that you should listen to. If you hang out with 10 people and they're not in that growth mindset, and I tell them, and I go, and this happened to me to a couple of my friends. I was like, hey, I'm turning 47. I've always wanted to fly a plane. I'm going to get my pilot's license. Oh, you're too old. You're too dumb. You're not going to be able to do it. I'm like, no, I want the challenge, which it was the most humbling thing I've ever done. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, is learn how to fly and not kill
Yeah.
myself or kill other people. But
Well,
like, if you have that support system, it's so much easier. When I got around other pilots, they're like, hey, let me help you. This is what worked for me.
but what I don't understand about that story is why would anybody who is quote unquote your friend say that? I mean, they think maybe they're protecting you from disappointment or death, but like, why would you tell somebody you cannot do? I mean, it's one thing if you said, okay, I'm 47, I'm going to play in the NBA, right? Okay, I understand that. It's like some physical issue there, but why? Why would they say you couldn't be a podcaster, or you cannot fly, or you cannot write a book, or you can't? I mean, I don't understand that at all.
Well, we're not close friends anymore with them. I don't want that discouragement. I was like, well, who are you to tell me what I can and can't do? Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Other than bad friends, kind of like I just talked about, what are the things that you felt that held you back in your career that you
Oh,
overcame?
Okay, so let's just put it out there that on a scale of 1 to 10 of things holding you back in your life, bad friends, negative friends, doom and gloom friends, I think they're about a 2. All right. What's really holding most people back is their own mindset. It's the it's the pessimist, it's the naysayer in their head. It's not the friend. The friend is relatively easy to ignore, as you proved. It's when you don't believe you can do something. That's the problem. And, I kind of encountered this when I wrote my first book in 1987, and I wrote The Macintosh Way. And I'm telling you, what was going through my mind is like, Guy, how can you possibly believe you can write a book? You're not an English major. You don't have a PhD in English. You've never taken Stanford continuing education series in how to write a book. You don't have an author mentor. You're like, what makes you think you can write a book? And then my wife gave me a book called If You Want to Write by Brenda Hewlin. And this book is a life changer for me because basically it said, if you want to write, write. You don't need anybody else's permission. You don't need external, validation of the Yale school on writing a book, or, you don't need to take a course in how to write a book. If you want to write, just freaking write. And now, many people listening to this may not be a writer, but if you're in any kind of endeavor like that, just substitute the word write and take that out and put in surf, put in fly, put in make movies, put in podcast, put in whatever you want. The concept is the same.
I think a lot of us have that imposter syndrome when we first start. Well, I mean, I had that when we started building the agency and I started building and hiring really amazing leaders. I look around the room going, why the hell am I here? Like, when are they gonna figure out the CEO needs to go?
Well, okay, I have some thoughts about that. So thought number 1 is it is far better to have the imposter syndrome than to have the entitlement syndrome. Because the entitlement syndrome is you look around the room and you say, these people are lucky to work for me because I am so freaking superior to all of them. They're going to learn from me. They should be paying me to work here, right? That's a much worse syndrome to overcome than imposter syndrome. Because imposter syndrome, at least it implies that you are awake as opposed to awoke. You are awake and you are relating to, feelings of inferiority or feelings of, insecurity or all that. And I got to tell you, man, it's not so bad to feel inferior and insecure if you work to overcome that. If you let it cripple you, that's another thing. But I mean, on the other hand, when you feel entitled, you just don't grow.
And Natalie was an amazing guest where we talk about letting go and really how can you start trusting your team so you don't have to do everything. Because if you're doing everything, you're just never going to scale.
The scale kind of snuck up on me. I think I'm just now adjusting to the reality, which...
What's surprising you about the scale part? Because a lot of people can hit the million mark sometimes by accident and then really kind of, getting over the next million and then constantly keep building, it gets more complex. What's really kind of snuck up on you for the scaling that stood out to you that's been like, hey, this has been kind of challenging?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I would say it's a lot of things, particularly accountability.
Accountability for what? For you to the employees or employees to you? For
each client. So I myself was managing every single client. We're over 20 clients now. That doesn't work anymore.
It's probably why you were sick all the time.
Right, exactly. So making sure other people are responsible for that. I'll show up, say hi, create a relationship with our accounts. There are some accounts that I'm way more involved in than others now, but that shift between, I guess going back to the control thing, letting some control go, hiring people you trust to manage a relationship, and making sure you don't lose sight of that relationship long term because you might have been the one to create it or start it. So yeah, I think that was definitely the biggest thing.
So the first time, because there's a lot of people listening right now that, how do I say this nicely? You're a control freak, and you won't give up control to your team, or possibly you don't trust your team, which is a whole nother issue. So let's kind of unpack it a little bit. How did you find people that you trust? And then did you delegate an outcome to them, or did you say, here's the exact task that I would do? Like, walk us through that.
I was lucky enough to work with people I've known for like 10 years. So I have
the network.
Yes. And I've become really good friends with my coworkers. And, I consider us a community of professionals, not a hierarchical agency. Like, so everyone I've hired, there are some people that are only for execution and they're really good at that one thing. There are others that, can add a lot more value to a conversation than I could on a certain topic. And that they have the depth and the breadth to offer like full service to companies. So I think, going back to the scale is we're a full service agency, and finding where, there's still a weakness, even if you're full service. There's a lot of agencies that say they're full service, but they started in design. And maybe they're struggling with some other items. For us, we started in content and demand generation. And so we're really trying to scale our creative side, which I've just now recruited different talent to kind of make that, it's not like we're bad, but like we're not the best. So like, how do we really, really focus? So I think focus is a key term. And then, definitely working with people that you trust. And I'm an enabler or an empowerment. Like, I want to give you complete control. I don't need to make every decision, but I'm nosy. So I'm always aware of everything. But I want to influence decisions, not make them all the time. So I think trust is key. You can't have a good team without having complete trust, so that you can have healthy conflict. And if you have healthy conflict, then you can actually lead to getting results done. Because if I were to assume I'm right all the time, we wouldn't be as successful as we were, or as we are.
Yeah, it took me a long time to realize that if I need to make all the decisions, it's the wrong team. I just need to make the final decision, or not the final decision. It's more about the decision of where we're actually going, and let everyone else figure out what's the method we use in order to get there. And, I've always been trying to instill this in our agency mastermind with members when they ask a question, or even when they have their team ask a question to the owner. It's like, hey, Jason, what should I do here? I'd be like, well, what's the problem, or what's the question? And then what are the 3 possible outcomes, or the 3 possible solutions you're thinking? And what's that one outcome that you want? And then if you can kind of make them talk through that, they can come up with their own conclusion. And then you can kind of go, well, yeah, why don't you go try that? Rather than trying to fix everything. For many years, when I ran the first agency, I struggled because I would try to solve everybody's problem for them rather than trying to put that back on. And that's very hard. Even to today, someone will come to me with a problem and I want to solve it. And I got to kind of sometimes kind of throttle myself back a little bit and going, hey man, like, this is a teaching moment. It may take us a little bit longer to teach them, and they may not get there as fast, but it's kind of that old saying of, I can give you a fish, or I can teach you how to fish. And teaching you how to fish is longer, but now if you have 20 people fishing, you're going to hopefully, if you are a good teacher for fishing, unless you go on my boat, most time we don't catch any fish.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really relate to that, because I think I still struggle with that. I told you in the beginning of this interview that I was a problem solver, and that's what kind of led me into wanting to be a consultant, which led to running an agency. I mean, I love solving problems. So yeah, being able to say, sorry, I can't solve this problem, or traveling and being out of pocket all day. Well, like, I guess that term is Gen Z doesn't accept that term anymore. So being unavailable that week, to be there for my team is hard because, or is a natural test to if they can solve a problem without me being there. So because I've got myself personally have had so many commitments and been so busy, I've been the only salesperson up until now. I've kind of been forced to let go and to not make decisions, and for my team kind of be left making them, they're swimming on their own because I wasn't there for like a couple days or something. So I've been incredibly impressed with my team because of that. But I do think I need to spend a little bit more time than I do on my existing agency. I'm spending more time on my clients than my own company. And so that's the shift where I'm at, where I've got to spend more time on my company and the people. Clients are very, very important, as we all know, but they can also steal all your time, and before you know it, your own business is hurting. And so we're not there yet, but that's just kind of what I've been recognizing recently.
I was going to ask you about the freedom that you have right now. Do you have any freedom? Like, you're a multi-million-dollar agency. A lot of people would like to be in your shoes. But I also tell people, I'm like, without freedom, it's not even worth it. So do you have the freedom that you envisioned when you were starting the agency yet?
In the beginning, yes, it was amazing.
The fun stage.
Yeah. I really so I'm past the fun stage, but that was great. Now, it's a choice. I have to choose whether to put my full self to the point where I'm exhausted in the business at all times, or find those boundaries. And so it's a conscious decision you have to make every single day, and make sure you find out if you're not able to put your full self in, who's there to fill the gap if it's not you, because you're the only person that's going to care as much about your business as you do, unless you have equity. That I have equity incentives that helps, but finding the right people to fill in that gap. So right now I'm at the point where I need an assistant. I have been pushing. I don't need one for a really long time. I've had some virtual assistants, some part-time help, but I need a professional who can help me make sure that I'm prepared when I show up with everything at the right time, the right place. But then so does my entire team. So I've been thinking about a lot of different gaps recently of what could make our existing team more efficient. Where am I dropping the ball because I'm constantly going to be taking on more, and so I'm going to constantly have to delegate or take a chunk off of my job and create a new job for it. And, of course, that new job sometimes impacts profitability, but does it give you an opportunity to make more money later? Yes. So finding that perfect balance. But I think it's an everyday thing.
And last up, I interviewed Gino Wickman, and we talk about how you can avoid burnout in your agency, and how do you figure out where is the perfect amount of time that you need to work every week and each day, so you don't get burnout, and so you don't get bored as well.
So in this book, Shine, once we cover what you and I just talked about, and it's kind of in the first 27 pages, this kind of aha moment and opportunity that exists for all of us driven entrepreneurs. There are then two parts to the book, the first half and the second half. And in the first part, in the first half of the book, what I teach are 3 discoveries to free your true self. And so I'll come back to that in just a second. Yeah. Second half of the book is then 10 disciplines to maximize your energy, your impact, and your inner peace. And then I'll come back to that as well. But let's start with the first half of the book, because the first half is the what, just so you fully understand what's really going on inside of you as a driven entrepreneur. The second half is exactly how to do it. It's the how. So I'll keep it real high level, but you can drill down as deep as you want. But in that first half, the what is about understanding these 3 discoveries. So as a driven entrepreneur, to free your true self, it starts with really important awarenesses. And the first one, i.e. a discovery, is understanding that you are driven. And so as a driven person, you are the 10% of the planet that has this very specific DNA that creates your drive. It's actually a flaw in our genetics. So It's not a good thing in terms of the design of the human body, but it certainly benefits us because we are the creators of most things on the planet. We, the driven, with this flaw. And so the D2, D4 gene, there's something in how it fires that we just don't feel as rewarded as most. And Dr. Doug Brackman, like I mentioned, his book Driven describes this very nicely. But included in these driven people are not only entrepreneurs, but Navy SEALs, athletes, things like that. So that's the 10% we're talking about. And so it starts with understanding I am driven, start to understand this fact that it's your DNA and it's your wiring. It's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is all that we create. The curse is certainly the downside where we do a lot of damage to ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and to the loved ones and people in our life.
Mhm.
And so just understanding these dynamics that lead to addictions and numbing and all that wonderful stuff, hiding from pain. The second discovery is understanding that all decisions are made out of love or fear. When you really understand the dynamic, and when you understand clearly what's happening, your ego is either running the show or your true self is running the show. And so fear-based decisions are from ego, love-based decisions are from your true self, and it's understanding what's going on below the surface. I always hold my hands under my chin and talk about when the tectonic plates are shifting and the central nervous system is amped up, as it is for a driven entrepreneur, to understand what's really going on and that there's blocks and that suit of armor that you built and how to shed that and understand what it is you're trying to protect that doesn't need to be protected anymore. Just comes down to really starting to become aware and let that stuff come up. And then the third discovery is discovering that it is possible to be driven and have peace. It is possible. I've proved it for myself. Our clients are proving it. So it is possible for those tectonic plates to not be shifting, for the central nervous system to not be amped up. And what's crazy is to be driven and have peace, you will actually have more drive, which is what scares us. We actually think we're going to lose our drive if we find peace. We think that that is our secret formula, that drive that we have, but there's a different way, a different source of the motivation for drive. And it's an inside out approach to the world as opposed to the outside in approach where our ego is running the show.
Do
So there's the three discoveries at a high level, but yeah, please
Yeah.
drill down on anything you'd like.
so is it? I want to kind of dive a little bit more into the driven and the peace part.
Yeah.
So do people think that? How do I phrase it? Where, let's say, and I think I've gone through this a couple different times, where you get your business to a certain level, and then you're like, wow. Like, so for example, like now, I only work on Tuesdays through Thursdays, 9 to 2. Don't do meetings on Monday.
Good for you.
Do epic stuff on Friday, family Saturday and Sunday. And I feel like sometimes, like I was driven to get there, and then you feel comfortable or at peace, right? And then you're like, well, and then I'm comfortable. And then I tell people a lot of times, and this might be wrong, this might be right, I don't know. When you get to a comfortable stage, go buy something stupid, because that won't, you know, give you a little bit more drive. Be like, man, I bought something stupid, so I need to pay for this to get that drive back. So what are your thoughts around that? Am I completely, utterly crazy or what?
Well, I would start by saying I don't agree with that, but this is the beauty of the world. We're allowed to disagree. So who knows who's right? In other words, all I'm sharing is one man's opinion and experience. And now, as I've taught this, many other people have had the experience. So let me just zoom out on that a little bit, and then we'll come right back to your question, because what we're talking about is that discovery number 3. It's possible to be driven and have peace, because what you're describing is what's really going on for a driven entrepreneur that doesn't really get this, because I'll speak from experience. Okay. And so when I, at age 15, put on the suit of armor to protect myself from ever feeling pain again, I created this tough guy image that served me well to build a business. And I always thought that if I found peace or contentment, it would zap me of my drive. And all I'd want to do is sit in a hut and meditate all day. And I would just be like worthless, totally unproductive.
Get the wacky tobacco and the hut.
Exactly. So, but it's just the opposite. And I got my first glimpse of peace in my mid-20s when my daughter was born. And this second she was born, I felt this incredible sensation that I can only describe as bliss, peace. And it lasted an hour and it scared the shit out of me. And the reason it lasted an hour is because I stuffed it back down because I literally thought it felt wimpy. It felt weak. I thought it was going to like completely change who I was. Well, that was my true self and my soul rearing its head at 25. Well, again, that lasted an hour. Happened again with my son. Point I'm making is shoot forward in time after shedding a lot of my shit. I don't know if I've shed it all. I don't know where I am on this journey to being 100% free, but the point is, when you find that peace, when you shed the stuff, when you go to the stuff that's motivating you for all the wrong reasons, i.e., outside in. And so outside in means that's just your ego running the show, not understanding your DNA and this issue with the driven gene. And so outside in says every decision I'm making, I'm measuring it against competition, comparison, judgment. I'm letting outside forces make my decisions. When you shed all that, when your ego dissolves, you don't care what anybody thinks on the outside. You all of a sudden now come from the inside out, which is more of a calling, a purpose. And so it's just much more purposeful. And it's literally 10 times the drive. And it's a peaceful drive. So to your point, I love what you said, because I had a business partner in my first business in my 20s who would say that, because we would teach salespeople. And he would say, if you're not feeling motivated, go buy something expensive, because that will, well, that should not be how you're motivated. And so, I pretty much, from a tangible standpoint, have everything I'll ever need. And I am more motivated than ever to create more, be more, do more. But the point is, I don't need those outside factors to motivate me. It's just a very purposeful drive. So yeah, it shouldn't have to be buying a sports car to be the thing that motivates you to go to work tomorrow.
I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.